What if I told you that the greatest secrets to survival among indigenous peoples lie not in their weapons, but in their everyday evening habits? Are you ready to learn the truth about how they coped with freezing rain without modern technology? A cold downpour on the endless plains or in dense forests meant certain death for an unprepared traveler. However, the indigenous peoples of America turned their struggle against the elements into an evening ritual, refined down to the smallest detail. Every action before bedtime had a specific purpose and saved them from certain freezing. Watch the video to the end to learn how properly laying bark and creating an invisible thermal barrier helped them wake up safe and sound. I will reveal the best-kept secret of a perfect dry night in an icy downpour. Long before nightfall, the tribes of the northeastern forest began to collect special types of bark for insulation. They knew that the ground draws heat much faster than cold air. Therefore, creating an elevated platform became the primary task of every member of the camp. Thick pieces of elm or ash bark, laid overlapping, were used as a base. These materials created a reliable barrier between the damp soil and the sleeping person's body. A soft layer of dry leaves and moss was laid on top of the base layer. This multi-layered mattress worked like a thermos, trapping heat inside the shelter. Forest dwellers carefully selected only the driest moss, which they hid from the rain under large trees. Even in the heaviest downpour, this natural material remained an excellent insulator. Proper installation took time, but it guaranteed a comfortable rest. The ability to find dry materials in heavy rain was considered an essential survival skill. For additional protection from moisture, mats woven from reeds were used. They were hung over entrances and covered the interior walls of shelters. Reeds were excellent at wicking away water and creating an additional air layer. Weaving such mats took a long time, so they were carefully preserved and transported from place to place. When rolled up, they took up little space but were extremely useful. The use of mats significantly increased the overall temperature inside a teepee or longhouse. In regions with strong winds, shelters were additionally reinforced from the outside. Heavy stones or logs were used for this purpose, pressing the lower edges of the covering to the ground. The wind could not penetrate inside and blow away the precious heat. The absence of drafts was a critical factor in maintaining health. People could sleep peacefully, knowing that their homes were reliably protected from the elements. Careful preparation of the perimeter was an important part of the evening schedule. Sometimes a small drainage ditch was dug around the shelter. It diverted rainwater away from the sleeping area. This simple engineering technique helped to prevent flooding even during the heaviest downpours. Sharp sticks or wide bones were used for digging. The earthworks were carried out quickly and efficiently before the soil became completely saturated. Cleanliness and dryness inside the dwelling were maintained by any means available. Strict order was also maintained inside the shelter. Wet clothes were taken off at the entrance and never brought into the sleeping area. Special wooden frames were constructed away from the resting area to dry them. Each item had its own place, which prevented confusion in the dark. The organization of space helped to save energy and time in critical situations. Indigenous peoples valued order and discipline in everyday matters. Preparing for sleep included rubbing the body to improve blood circulation. Dry bundles of stiff grass were used for this purpose. Energetic movements helped to warm up and prepare the muscles for rest on the hard floor. This simple massage relieved fatigue after a long journey in the cold rain. Physical preparation of the body was no less important than the arrangement of the shelter itself. Taking care of one's health was considered the personal responsibility of each individual. Only after completing all these steps did people allow themselves to close their eyes. Every action was dictated by centuries of experience of survival in harsh conditions. Mistakes in this process could be very costly, so all the rules were strictly followed. Nature did not forgive carelessness, and Native Americans understood this perfectly well. We would be very interested to hear your opinion on these methods of keeping warm. Please write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. The secret passed down from generation to generation lies in building a fire correctly. Building a fire in freezing rain required incredible skill and a deep understanding of the properties of wood. Native Americans used special methods to keep kindling dry, even on the wettest days. They carried birch bark and dry moss in special waterproof bags made of thick materials. These bags were always kept under their outer clothing, absorbing the heat of the human body. Dry kindling ensured that the fire would ignite with the first spark. A small bed of green branches served as the base for the fire. This bed prevented the damp ground from cooling the coals and extinguishing the nascent flame. The driest and thinnest twigs found in the lower tiers of dense trees were laid on top. People knew that even in heavy rain, the lower branches of fir trees remained dry. Gathering such firewood was a real art, requiring care and experience. Proper preparation of the fire site saved precious time and energy. After the first flames appeared, the fire had to be protected from precipitation. To do this, a small canopy was constructed from bark or dense leaves directly above the fire pit. The canopy took the brunt of the rain, allowing the wood to burn steadily. Gradually, thicker logs were added to the fire, capable of burning long and evenly. Maintaining an even flame required constant monitoring and proper distribution of fuel. The wood was arranged so that it would dry each other out during combustion. The evening fire in the shelter was never made too big. A huge flame could damage the dwelling or create too much smoke. A compact hearth provided enough heat to warm and dry clothes. The smoke escaped through a special opening in the roof of the teepee or longhouse. The draft was regulated by special valves at the top of the dwelling. This allowed for a comfortable atmosphere without the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Fire was also used to heat drinking water before bedtime. Hot water helped restore the body's internal temperature after a long stay in the cold. It was boiled in wooden or birch bark vessels by placing hot stones inside. This method allowed you to quickly get a hot drink without using metal utensils. A warm drink calmed and prepared the body for a good night's rest. Taking care of internal warmth was an essential part of the evening routine. Materials for the next day were dried by the fire. Shoes and clothing were laid out at a safe distance from the open fire. Drying too quickly could ruin items, making them stiff and brittle. Therefore, drying was done gradually, under the constant supervision of the person on duty at the hearth. Keeping the equipment in good condition ensured the tribe's continued survival. Attention to detail distinguished experienced travelers from novices. A reliable hearth served not only as a source of heat, but also as a symbol of safety. The family gathered around it, joining forces to withstand the harsh nature. Each spark was the result of tremendous effort and the accumulated knowledge of their ancestors. Do you agree with this? In the next chapter, you will learn how they used plants to create impenetrable armor against icy water. What the government doesn't want you to know is the power of ordinary cattail. This plant had incredible insulating properties, surpassing many modern materials. Its fluff was used to create dense layers in winter clothing and sleeping bags. The fluff was harvested in the fall and carefully stored in large woven baskets. On cold, rainy evenings, this material was a real lifesaver from hypothermia. People stuffed the space between layers of clothing with cattail fluff to retain as much heat as possible. Dry grass also served as an excellent filler for shoes. Before going to bed, the wet grass was thrown out of the moccasins and replaced with a new, completely dry portion. The grass absorbed the remaining moisture and created a soft, warm cushion for tired feet. This simple technique prevented frostbite and kept the feet in working order. The correct selection of grasses was determined by experience over many centuries. Plant fibers acted as reliable climate control for the body. Tree leaves were also used when setting up camp for the night. White oak or maple leaves were laid in a thick layer under the sleeping area. They created an additional barrier against the cold air rising from the ground. In autumn, fallen leaves became the main building material for insulation. The leaves were gathered in large armfuls and carefully compacted to increase their effectiveness. Nature itself provided everything necessary for a comfortable life in harsh conditions. Special hoods were woven from flexible plant fibers to protect the head and neck. Nettle or hemp fibers were woven so tightly that raindrops simply rolled off them. Such headgear was worn before bedtime if the roof of the shelter was questionable. Protecting the head was a priority, as a lot of heat escapes through it. Weaving such items required high precision and skill. Plant fibers proved to be surprisingly strong and durable materials. Tree resin was actively used to seal seams on clothing and shelters. Fir or pine resin was heated over a fire until it became liquid. It was then carefully applied to the joints between different materials. As it hardened, the resin turned into a completely waterproof barrier. This method made it possible to make any item truly waterproof. Knowledge of the properties of tree resins was essential for every adult. A whole system of hangers was created inside the dwelling to dry these plant materials. Grasses and moss were laid out on thin branches, high up under the ceiling of the teepee. This is where the warmest and driest air from the fire accumulated. Overnight, the damp materials dried completely and were ready for use the next day. Constant rotation of plant insulators ensured continuous comfort during prolonged rains. Effective use of space was a distinctive feature of the indigenous people's way of life. Every plant in the forest or on the plain had its own unique purpose. Using these gifts of nature allowed people to withstand the harshest weather conditions. Their knowledge of botany surpassed many modern scientific discoveries. They took from nature exactly what they needed to survive without destroying the ecosystem. Like this video if you are also amazed by the depth of Native Americans' knowledge of nature. Your support helps us create more historical analyses like this one. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the construction of a typical teepee? The architecture of the dwellings of the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains was a masterpiece of engineering. The conical shape of the teepee was ideal for withstanding strong winds and heavy rains. Streams of icy water did not linger on the surface but rolled down rapidly. This prevented the structure from sagging under the weight of accumulated moisture or snow. Each pole of the frame was set at a specific angle to achieve maximum stability. The outer shell of the teepee was stretched with incredible force. The tight tension prevented the formation of folds in which rainwater could accumulate. Strong wooden pegs driven deep into the ground were used to secure it. In rainy weather, the pegs had to be checked and hammered in regularly as the ground became soggy. Loosening of the tension threatened leaks and damage to property inside the dwelling. Maintaining the shape of the shelter was a daily and very responsible task. In forested regions, the architecture differed, but the principles remained similar. The longhouses of the Iroquois were built with a semicircular roof made of flexible young trees. This shape also facilitated rapid drainage during heavy rains. The roof was covered with large sheets of elm bark laid like modern tiles. The overlap of the sheets was calculated to prevent even slanting rain from penetrating. The entire structure was thought out to the smallest detail to protect large families from the cold. The evening ritual included a mandatory check of the ventilation holes. Special smoke valves at the very top of the cone served this purpose. The position of these valves was adjusted with long poles from outside the dwelling. During slanting rain, one valve was closed completely, while the other remained slightly open to allow smoke to escape. The ability to adjust the ventilation correctly was considered a sign of an experienced host. A mistake could lead to smoke filling the shelter or water falling directly on the hearth. Temporary hunting shelters were built on the principle of single-slope canopies. The reflective surface of the canopy was positioned at an angle to the fire, directing heat toward the sleeping people. The back wall was made as dense and solid as possible to block the icy wind. The roof of such a canopy was generously covered with spruce branches, laid with the stems facing upwards. Rainwater ran down the spruce needles onto the ground without getting inside the shelter. Building such a camp took a minimum of time, but required precise calculation. The entrance to any dwelling was always made small and low. This helped to minimize heat loss when people entered and exited. The opening was closed with a thick curtain made of thick materials that fit tightly to the edges. In some cases, double doors were used to create a kind of vestibule. Wet clothes were left in this vestibule, and dirt was shaken off before entering the main room. The geometry of the doorway played an important role in maintaining the microclimate. Native American architecture was the perfect response to the challenges of the environment. Every detail of their homes served a specific purpose for survival. It is amazing how deep their knowledge of aerodynamics and thermodynamics was. Do you think it was difficult to build such structures without modern tools? In the next chapter, you will learn how they coped with this terrible weather with the help of special eating rituals. Nutrition played a crucial role in preparing the body for cold nights. High-calorie, easily digestible food was needed to maintain a stable body temperature. The main food in such conditions was pemmican, a unique mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries. Pemmican had a long shelf life and provided a huge boost of energy with minimal volume. In the evening, before going to sleep in the rain, everyone ate a small portion of this nutritious food. The fats were slowly broken down in the body, releasing steady heat throughout the night. Warm food was preferable to dry rations in wet weather. If they managed to build a good fire, people cooked thick soups from roots and dried meat. Hot broth quickly warmed the internal organs and improved blood circulation. Wild onions or garlic were often added to the soup to strengthen the immune system. Cooking took time, but it was necessary to maintain physical strength. Eating together around the fire also strengthened social bonds within the group. Various nuts and seeds were an important part of the evening diet. They contained a lot of vegetable oils, which also helped to warm the body from the inside. The supplies of acorns or pine nuts collected in the fall were carefully distributed throughout the cold season. Nuts were ground into a paste or added to soups for thickness. Dense food gave a feeling of fullness, which helped to fall asleep faster in uncomfortable conditions. The body, busy digesting food, generated additional life-saving heat. Meals were always eaten in a calm and unhurried atmosphere. Chewing food thoroughly improved digestion and promoted better absorption of nutrients. In harsh conditions, it was impossible to waste energy on fighting stomach upset. Therefore, the quality of food and the process of its consumption were taken very seriously. Every calorie counted and had to be used to maximum benefit. Proper nutrition became the foundation for successfully withstanding the elements. The gathering of wild edible plants continued even during rainy transitions. Finding fresh roots or berries left on the branches was considered a great stroke of luck. Fresh vitamins helped combat general fatigue. Knowledge of where useful herbs grew was passed down from generation to generation. Every adult was an experienced gatherer and botanist by trade. Nature was their only supermarket, open all year round. Storing food in high humidity required special tricks. Dried meat and plants were packed in airtight birch bark boxes or thick bags. These containers were hung high under the ceiling of the shelter, away from the damp ground. Regular checks for mold were a mandatory evening routine. Spoiled food was immediately discarded to avoid mass poisoning. The preservation of food ensured the tribe's survival during the long winter months. Eating before bedtime was a carefully balanced process aimed at generating heat. Not a single morsel of food was wasted and was consumed with maximum efficiency. People understood the direct connection between what they ate and their ability to survive the freezing night. Calories were converted into degrees of internal heat, saving them from hypothermia. Competent management of the body's resources was the key to longevity and health. Strict discipline in nutrition helped indigenous peoples thrive in harsh environments. What would happen if no one knew about this simple secret to waterproofing? Native Americans used thick vegetable oils to treat their equipment. Rubbing oils into materials created a waterproof protective film. This procedure was carried out regularly, especially before the onset of the rainy season. The oils were extracted from various seeds and nuts through prolonged boiling and pressing. Carefully lubricated items not only repelled moisture, but also remained flexible in the cold. Shoe care took a special place in evening preparations. Moccasins were generously lubricated with prepared compounds to prevent them from getting wet. Particular attention was paid to the seams, through which water penetrated most quickly. The oil penetrated deep into the structure of the fibers, protecting the feet from icy puddles. Dry feet were the key to health and the ability to move quickly the next day. Shoe care was considered the personal responsibility of every traveler. Outerwear was also carefully treated. Thick fabrics were soaked in oils until they could no longer absorb liquid. Water simply rolled off such a surface in shiny drops. This method significantly increased the weight of the clothing, but made it completely windproof and waterproof. In wet weather, weight was irrelevant compared to heat retention. Oil impregnation was a reliable shield against the vagaries of North American nature. Vegetable fats were also applied to exposed areas of the body. The face and hands were coated with a thin layer of oil to protect them from chapping and cold. The oily film reduced heat loss and prevented direct contact between the skin and moisture. In addition, some vegetable compounds had a slight warming effect. Cosmetic procedures of this kind were purely practical and vitally important. Skincare prevented the appearance of painful cracks. Making protective oils took time and specific knowledge. Sunflower or bear nut seeds were carefully crushed with stones. Then this mixture was boiled in water for a long time, collecting the oil that floated to the surface. The finished product was stored in special airtight containers made of dense materials. Craftsmen who knew how to make high-quality impregnations were highly respected in the tribe. Their work saved their fellow tribesmen from the cold in the most difficult times. The smell of some oils had an additional practical effect. Strong aromas repelled pests that could spoil supplies in the shelter. The use of aromatic herbs in oil mixtures created a pleasant atmosphere inside the dwelling. This helped them relax and relieve nervous tension after a hard day. Emotional health was as important for survival as physical warmth. Aromatherapy in the wild had very specific purposes. Sometimes crushed charcoal was added to the oils to create a camouflage effect. This dark ointment was applied to the face before nighttime journeys in the rain. It not only concealed the person in the dark, but also protected the skin from the damp wind. The versatility of the remedies used is striking in its sophistication and effectiveness. The same product could serve as a water-repellent impregnation and a means of camouflage. A deep understanding of nature allowed them to get the most out of simple things. In forested areas, the Iroquois used American walnut oil. It was highly dense and perfectly suited for harsh weather conditions. Large quantities of this valuable resource were stored in the fall. Walnut oil was valued as highly as gold and was often used as a medium of exchange. The economy of indigenous peoples was based on the practicality and usefulness of the goods exchanged. Having good impregnations made life much safer and more comfortable. Applying oils to objects in the body was a soothing evening ritual. The monotonous movements helped them focus and prepare for a night's rest. It was a time for reflection and quiet conversation by the smoldering hearth. How effective do you think such preparations would be in modern conditions? In the next chapter, you will learn how strict discipline and the distribution of roles saved the lives of entire settlements. Survival in harsh conditions is impossible without strict organization within the group. Each tribe had a clearly structured system of duty rosters during overnight stays. The safety of the sleeping camp depended on the vigilance of several appointed sentries. These people did not sleep a wink all night, despite the freezing rain and piercing wind. Their duties included maintaining the fire, checking the condition of the shelters, and observing the surroundings. Refusal to stand guard or sleeping on duty was severely punished by the community. The guards were relieved several times a night to maintain concentration. A numb and tired person would lose vigilance, which could lead to tragedy. Therefore, the duty roster was drawn up so that everyone could get their share of rest. The shift change took place quietly, without unnecessary noise so as not to wake the others. The relieving sentry reported on the weather and any suspicious sounds. This system ensured continuous control over the situation in the camp. In the event of a leak, the guard on duty was obliged to repair it immediately. He always had spare pieces of bark and resin at his disposal for urgent repairs. He had to act quickly so that the water did not have time to wet the sleeping quarters and supplies. If he couldn't handle it on his own, the guard would wake up the shelter's owner to work together. Quickly solving problems prevented critical situations from developing at night. Paying attention to small details was the main quality of a good guard. Maintaining the fire was another critical task of the night shift. The person on duty had to add wood in time to prevent the flame from dying out. At the same time, the fire should not burn too strongly. The ideal temperature balance kept the dwelling warm and conserved limited fuel supplies. The skill of fire management was passed on to young people by their older and more experienced comrades. A rainy night was the best test of maturity and independence. Discipline inside the dwelling was also strictly observed by every member of the group. Sleeping places were allocated according to a strict hierarchy and rules of respect. Older family members occupied the warmest places, protected from drafts. Moving around the shelter at night was only allowed in cases of extreme necessity. Chaotic movement could lead to injuries in the dark or the overturning of supplies. Order and silence were the key to a peaceful rest for everyone present. Mutual assistance was the basis for the survival of indigenous peoples in all conditions. If someone's shelter was destroyed by the wind, the whole camp came to the rescue. People shared dry clothes, a place by the fire, and hot food with those affected. No one was left alone to face the raging elements and cold. Collectivism prevailed over individualism when it came to the survival of the entire tribe. Selfish behavior in such situations simply did not make sense. Before bedtime, the elders often told stories about the survival of their ancestors. These tales served not only as entertainment, but also as a kind of instruction on how to behave in a crisis. The younger generation absorbed knowledge through the metaphors and images of ancient legends. Oral traditions contained information about the habits of nature and methods of building shelters. The educational process continued even on the most difficult and rainy evenings. The wisdom of the ages helped to maintain calm and confidence in the future. Strict discipline and coordinated actions transformed a disparate group into a single organism. This organism was capable of withstanding any blows from the merciless nature of North America. The rules of conduct in the camp were formed by the experience of many generations of travelers. They were not the whims of the leaders, but the only possible way to avoid destruction. Compliance with these laws was a matter of honor and common sense for everyone. Their unity made them invincible in the face of any storm. Keeping equipment dry was a difficult task during prolonged rains. Moisture penetrated everywhere, destroying materials and rendering them unusable. Native Americans developed unique methods for drying things inside cramped dwellings without using open fire. Direct heat from a fire could melt resin impregnations or overdry fabric fibers. Therefore, items were dried exclusively with warm air rising to the ceiling of the shelter. This process required tremendous patience and constant monitoring by those on duty. Special multi-tiered frames were constructed inside the teepee or longhouse. The most delicate plant materials were placed on the lower tiers, away from the heat. Wet clothes were hung above, and firewood was dried at the very top. This stratification allowed the heat energy of the hearth to be used with maximum efficiency. Items were regularly turned and rehanged to ensure even drying on all sides. Careful maintenance of the wardrobe guaranteed its durability in harsh conditions. Shoes were always dried off, away from direct heat sources. If moccasins were placed too close to the fire, they would shrink and become stiff. Dry grass or heated small stones were tightly stuffed inside wet shoes. This filler absorbed moisture from the inside, keeping the product in the right shape. The natural drying process could take several days, so a spare pair was always available. Spare shoes were an essential part of any traveler's equipment. Special trays were used to protect belongings from moisture coming from the ground. These trays were woven from flexible twigs and raised the load a few centimeters. Free air circulation under the belongings prevented dampness and unpleasant odors. Moisture dripping from outer clothing did not accumulate at the bottom, but was absorbed into the earthen floor. Competent distribution of space inside the dwelling saved property from damage. Each basket or bag had its own specific place on the platform. Dry items were immediately hidden in special waterproof birch bark boxes. These boxes were sewn together with spruce roots and carefully sealed with heated resin. Birch bark containers were lightweight, durable, and completely impervious to moisture. They served as reliable safes for storing the most valuable clothing and untouchable supplies of kindling. The art of making such boxes was passed down from generation to generation as a great treasure. Birch bark craftsmen were valued in all tribes of the forest zone. An important rule was to never go to bed in wet or damp clothes. Even if it was not possible to change, the wet outer layer had to be removed. People slept in the minimum amount of dry clothes possible, covered with thick blankets. The warmth of the human body under the blanket was better than cold, wet fabric. Ignoring this rule inevitably led to hypothermia and serious problems. Strict adherence to sleep hygiene saved people from certain disaster. Warm stones from the fire were also used to dry sleeping areas. They were placed on damp areas of the floor, and the heat quickly evaporated the accumulated water. After that, the stones were removed, leaving the surface dry and warm for sleeping. This quick method helped to quickly restore comfort after a sudden roof leak. The ingenuity and the use of simple physical laws is amazing. The stones served as heaters and dryers at the same time, saving time and energy. Constant care for equipment turned into an endless cycle of actions. It took a lot of time and effort, but it was absolutely necessary for survival. Clothing and shelter were like a second skin for Native Americans, protecting them from a hostile world. Their respectful attitude toward things reflected the general worldview of these peoples. They did not waste resources and cherished what nature gave them. This rational approach allowed them to conquer the most inhospitable territories. Physical protection from rain and cold was only half the battle for successful survival. Psychological resilience in the face of raging elements played an equally important role. Long hours spent in a cramped, dark shelter, accompanied by icy downpours, took a toll on the psyche. The fear of possible destruction of their homes or the fire going out was a constant companion. Indigenous peoples developed powerful mental practices to combat panic and despondency. Maintaining calm was considered a sign of true strength and courage. The The rhythmic pounding of rain on bark or stretched fabric could be very tiring for the mind. To distract themselves from oppressive thoughts, people sang quiet, monotonous songs. These songs resembled meditation and helped synchronize breathing with the rhythms of nature. The sound vibrations calmed the nervous system and induced a state of light trance. Singing together created a sense of unity and security within a small space. Music became an invisible shield, reflecting anxiety and primal fear. The focus of attention was deliberately shifted from external discomfort to internal sensations. People concentrated on the warmth coming from the hearth and the steady breathing of their loved ones. The ability to find positive moments even in the most difficult situations was a vital skill. Gratitude for the fact that the roof did not leak and the fire was burning gave strength. Positive thinking directly affected the body's ability to resist the cold. Psychosomatics worked for the benefit of those who knew how to control their thoughts. Creating a routine and the strict rules of conduct also played a therapeutic role. Performing the usual evening rituals of preparing for bed calmed the mind. Being busy with small household chores left no time for panic and depressive thoughts. Each member of the group knew their responsibilities and focused on performing them perfectly. The routine created the illusion of control over the situation, which was extremely important for the psyche. Order in actions led to order in thoughts. Communication in the shelter was kept to a minimum so as not to waste valuable energy. Conversations were whispered so as not to disturb the general atmosphere of peace and tranquility. The use of sign language helped to convey information without words, even in the dim light. The silence inside the dwelling contrasted with the roar of the storm outside, creating a cozy microcosm. The ability to be silent and listen to each other strengthened the trust between the members of the tribe. Words were used rarely, but this only increased their value. Ritual smoking of tobacco or special herbs often concluded the evening preparations. Smoke was considered a link between the world of humans and the world of higher powers. By exhaling smoke, people mentally sent their requests for protection and good weather. This ritual helped relieve muscle tension and prepare the mind for sleep. The aroma of herbs purified the air in the cramped room and created an atmosphere of sacredness. Spiritual practices were inseparable from everyday survival. The attitude towards sleep was deeply sacred in Native American culture. Sleep was considered a time when the soul travels and receives messages from ancestors. Preparing for sleep was akin to preparing for an important spiritual journey. Therefore, people tried to fall asleep with pure thoughts and in a state of complete inner peace. They believed that fear and anxiety could attract evil forces into the world of dreams. Purity of thought was as necessary as dry clothes. The ability to fall asleep in any conditions was the result of many years of training. The body got used to hard surfaces, and the mind shut out external stimuli. People knew how to fall into a deep sleep in short bursts to restore their strength. This skill allowed them to maintain clarity of mind during long journeys in the rain. The ability to relax on command was a sign of the highest control over one's own body. They slept not because it was comfortable, but because it was necessary for life. The psychological armor of indigenous peoples was no less durable than their physical shelters. They met the blows of the elements with philosophical calm and fatalism. Their world was not divided into comfortable and uncomfortable. It was perceived as a single whole. The art of survival lay in the ability to fit harmoniously into these harsh realities. They did not conquer nature. They learned to live by its strict laws. Their strength of spirit is their greatest legacy, deserving of deep respect and study. After surviving a cold and rainy night, the camp woke up with the first rays of the sun. The morning began not with rest, but with immediate action to restore order. The first thing to do was to inspect the condition of the dwellings and identify any damage sustained during the night. Loosened tent ropes were retightened, and damaged areas of the roof were reinforced with fresh materials. A quick assessment of the damage allowed them to plan the work for the next few hours. No one sat idle. Work was in full swing from early morning. The main task was to immediately build a strong and hot fire. If the person on duty managed to save the coals, the process took only a few minutes and required minimal effort. Containers of water were placed on the fresh fire to prepare a hot morning drink. This decoction of pine needles or roots helped to finally wake up and start the digestive processes. The hot liquid circulated blood through the frozen body, restoring its flexibility and strength. The morning always began with warming up from the inside and outside. All wet clothes and plant bedding were immediately taken out of the shelters. When the rain stopped, the camp turned into a large-scale exhibition of things drying in the wind. Every blade of grass was shaken out of the shoes and replaced with a fresh, dried portion from the hearth. Air out your sleeping spots to keep your homes from getting damp. The sun was the best helper in dealing with the aftermath of a night storm. The tribe's life depended on how fast their gear dried. The morning meal was heavier than the evening one to make up for the calories burned. The body burned a lot of energy to stay warm while sleeping in extreme conditions. Therefore, breakfast often consisted of fatty foods or thick soups with nuts. A nutritious breakfast gave them the strength to repair the camp or continue their long journey. Replenishing energy reserves was a critical step in maintaining health. People ate a lot, knowing that a hard day lay ahead. After breakfast, they began checking and maintaining their tools and weapons. Bows were carefully inspected for wood delamination due to excess moisture. The bowstrings were removed, dried, and re-greased to maintain elasticity. Arrowheads were cleaned of rust if they contained metal elements. The tribe's combat readiness had to remain high in all weather conditions. Weapons were a guarantee of safety and a successful life. The earthen floor inside the shelters was carefully cleaned of damp ash and debris. A fresh layer of dry earth or sand was poured around the hearth to absorb any remaining moisture. The dwelling was tidied up, ready for the next cycle of overnight stays. Cleanliness in the house directly affected the health and general well-being of all its inhabitants. Cleaning was not perceived as a duty, but as a necessary condition for survival. The order in the camp reflected the internal discipline of the indigenous people. Experienced scouts set out to explore the surroundings immediately after dawn. The damp ground after rain perfectly preserved traces on the ground and footprints of possible ill-wishers. Reading these traces provided valuable information about what had happened around the camp during the night. Reconnaissance helped to plan the further route or determine locations for successful searches. Knowledge of the surrounding environment was key to the safety of the entire settlement. Nature itself suggested the right decisions to them. If the weather did not improve and the rain continued, the camp prepared for a long stay. Several times more firewood was gathered to ensure that the fires burned continuously. Additional drainage ditches were created to protect the dwellings from possible mudslides. Life came to a standstill, and people focused solely on staying warm and dry. They accepted their forced inactivity calmly, without complaining about the vicissitudes of fate. Patience was one of the main virtues of these hardy people. Every morning after a storm was a small victory over the merciless elements. People rejoiced in the new day and thanked nature for helping them survive the night. These trials tempered their character and made them even more resilient to the blows of fate. Their experience accumulated over centuries, turning into a unique system of knowledge about survival. No modern equipment can replace this deep wisdom and understanding of nature. They were the true masters of this land, living in complete harmony with it. Studying their methods gives us an amazing picture of the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. Actions that seem simple at first glance conceal precise engineering and biological calculations. Survival in freezing rain was not a coincidence, but the result of strict discipline and knowledge. Every detail of their daily life had been honed to perfection by generations of ancestors. This legacy teaches us respect for nature and the incredible capabilities of the human body. Their story remains an eternal lesson in adapting to the most extreme conditions on the planet. We have looked at some amazing facts about how the indigenous peoples of North America withstood freezing rain using only what nature provided. Their survival skills and deep understanding of the laws of physics are astonishing in their ingenuity. Which of these ancient survival tricks did you find the most unusual and effective in harsh conditions? Write your answer in the comments. We are very interested in your opinion. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting historical research.